Well, I'm really excited to be here today. So excited to meet with all of you. I really enjoy meeting with students and mentoring students, and actually love hiring students too. We have quite a number of young people, high school and college students that we hire at my work. And so before I start, I want to just kind of get a general idea of what each of your majors are, maybe where you're from. So really quickly, if we could go around the room, there's not many. So I think we could quickly just maybe state your major and where you're from or where you grew up mostly. Why don't we start on the back row?
My name is Tyler. I grew up here in Salt Lake.
Okay. Great.
Hi, I'm Brendan. I'm born and raised here in Utah. I'm going into finance.
Danielle, I've already got my certificates in business here and
Thank you.
I live in Salt Lake. Okay.
Oh, just where you're from. You live in Salt Lake, and then what's your major?
Oh, just business.
Business. Okay.
My name is Sloan. Born and raised here. I'm just a general business.
my name is born and raised. I'm a fellow faculty member. I teach marketing. I was born and raised here, lived all over.
Oh, awesome. And where did you get your master's?
Utah State.
Utah State. Great. Great school. My sister went there and have neighbors that have gone there. One thing that I didn't include in my resume, I actually did one class, one semester here at Salt Lake College. It was right before I got married, almost 22 years ago, or a little over 22 years ago. I didn't know any Spanish, and I was moving to Mexico City. I started a work business there and was getting married as well in Mexico City. So I took a couple crash courses, one through a high school, and I felt I didn't learn enough, so I took Spanish 101, where I learned, more basics and a more structured way of learning Spanish that helped give me a base to be able to speak Spanish, and I'm probably 80% fluent conversations and business in Spanish and whatnot. But enjoyed that. I attended at the campus on State Street, one that used to be South High School, but they made it to campus for Salt Lake Community College. So really enjoyed that class and helped give me a base to learn Spanish, which subsequently, for probably 8 or 9 years, I worked for a company that almost everyone there was employed. It was a smaller business, but we had about 60 employees. And that particular company was the food distribution company that you mentioned. That particular company, we had about 60 employees, and about a third of them didn't speak English. And another, almost 2/3, Spanish was the first language. So it made it so that helped give me a base to be able to talk to my employees and better communicate with them. So it's been really fun. Encourage you to take language classes if you haven't. Some emerging great language, obviously Spanish for the US. But I want to back up a little bit. My career a little bit different and took kind of a different path as far as what I would necessarily recommend. So what I'm going to tell you is how I did things in my career, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing it the same way that I did it. I think that working for other companies first before starting a company gives you a much better base for knowledge, learning, training, etc. So I think working for companies that can help you and you can help them. I would look at it as just them helping you, but you helping them, but at the same time, you helping them, you becoming as good as you can do, whatever you're doing with them will help you. So for me, it's a win-win. I've never been disappointed with someone that wants to advance their career and do something different than what they're doing for me at the time as their employer. I've always wanted to encourage people and employees that I work with to expand, and if that means moving on to a different company, then so be it. Many people, when you do a great job for a company, they're going to want to try and keep you if they can, you know. So we at my company right now, we really want to try to keep everyone that we can, grow them into different positions with the company. And fortunately, where I've been right now, it's a company that started with about 50 employees when I started there almost 9 years ago, and now we're to about 180 employees. And as far as revenue, we're probably 8 times what we were when I first started. The term middle market is a term for banking, and what that means is a company that's over 10 million in revenue to 100 million is considered a middle market. Whereas if you're under 10 million, you'd be considered a small business now. And small business can mean many different things. But to a bank, that's what it means. To Small Business Administration, they have different rules of what they consider as a small business. We're still a small business in terms of what the SBA would probably term as a small business. But going back to the start of my career, I would say I'd have to go back to when I was about 11 years old when I had my first job. I worked for my dad doing some construction and helped to build some buildings. And then the next summer, I got a job in doing maintenance work at an apartment complex. I continued to do maintenance work all through high school until graduating high school. And it helped me become more mechanical, and I was able to do a variety of different things that helped me learn things mechanically, helped me learn how to work with various workers. So how that's helped me in my position right now. My title is General Manager and Chief Operating Officer. Our CEO is also our Chief Engineer at where I work, which is a medical device company. And he's offloaded all the day-to-day stuff onto a general manager, me. And so he's not involved in the day-to-day stuff. So I have to worry about everything from the mechanical stuff in a building, toilets clogging, to roof needs repair, HVAC unit goes out. And so working at a small business, for me, it's fun. It's not necessarily for everyone. And I wouldn't necessarily say that working in a small business for everyone is what they want. They have the best talents at. But at a small business, you're going to see a variety of many different things. And you're going to wear many different hats. And so probably going to wear several hats and have a variety of different things that you will be involved in. So working in this company, yes, I have people that do repairs on the building, someone that does maintenance, and we have all of that, but yet it's one that someone at a small business can be involved in. For me, that's fun. I enjoy the variety of lots of things, and so for me, that works. But it's a different experience. Let me go back a little bit. So during college, I took a year off of school. I first started at the University of Utah, and then I took a year off and worked for IBM as a financial pricer in Washington, D.C. For the federal sector division of IBM. My major was finance in college, and that's what I have a bachelor's degree in. But I took a year off, wanted to gain some experience in that area. And at the end of it, they offered me a job and wanted me to stay out there. I probably would have gotten my degree from Johns Hopkins if I had done that, because I was enrolled in Johns Hopkins and took some master classes there. But decided not to go back to Salt Lake to finish my school. That's what the last year and a half did research at the University of Utah. Really enjoyed that as well. So the difference in experience, though, working for IBM, much different. As a financial pricer, what I did was forecast the prices of the bids and the contracts that IBM was working on into the future. And so the one that I worked on was the redoing of air traffic control centers that were around the country. So it was a government division of IBM, and one of those buildings that you have to pass through a security guard, do your card both times, show a badge to somebody. So it was really secure, and had a lot of confidential and private information. It was high tech and really cool. So from that standpoint, I enjoyed working there. Did work long hours there, but it was very enjoyable. But it was very specific to financial pricing. I really didn't do anything else. It was focused very much in that one area, and that's what they hired me for. And it was basically getting all the costs from all the different engineers and then forecasting those costs into the future of the bid. So this particular contract went out several years. So it was basically forecasting, is this pen going to be the same price 5 years from now? The cabling, the electronics, the computers, et cetera, and we forecasted that into the future. Had a really fun time doing that. Was able to actually train a couple new employees there. Ironically, that I was doing the same thing they were doing, but because of education, they made much more money than I did, and it was a long-term career situation for them. And so one of them was a Cornell MBA that I was training, and the other one was a Harvard MBA that I was training. And so that was fun in and of itself. But it also told me that getting ahead more quick in a career, the most education that you can get, the better. So I would encourage each of you who are looking at going into management. A faster track to that would be get an MBA after you get whatever degree that you get your degree in. I used to think that it was good to go back into industry and work for several years and then get your MBA. But as life happens, I think that life circumstances change, and it's harder and harder to get advanced degrees the older that you get. It's certainly not impossible, and it's certainly something that I would encourage at any age to continue your is harder. I had an opportunity after college. I applied for a PhD program in finance. Some of the schools that I applied to also, I would earn an MBA on the way to getting a PhD in finance. And there was only one school that I applied to that I didn't get in, and that was in Pennsylvania, called the Wharton School of Business. Has anyone heard of Wharton? So I didn't get into that school, but everywhere else, it remained a possibility to get my degree. And I interviewed with several different universities and applied. Later, I wanted to find out why did I get into work. Like I was a good student. I thought I was intelligent. I thought I had a good presentation, good references, and everything. And I found out that every finance PhD candidate at that particular school, does anyone guess what their GPA was for undergraduate? 4.0. I did not have a 4. And I honestly, I've never requested the transcript of anyone that's ever applied for any job for me for their grades. I've asked them, did you do good in school? What's your GPA? That's a question I've asked, but I've never asked for the actual transcript. So if you're looking at going to graduate school, not every graduate school is as stringent as Wharton School's finance program, but it was the #1 finance program in the country. It was rated by various independent rating companies. But my point is that to do your research on what you want to do so that you know what's required. And then that will help you with your end goal, whatever that goal is. If your end goal is to get a PhD from the Wharton School of Business, then you probably should be a full-time student and not have a job or a second job. I worked 30 to 40 hours a week during college and didn't realize scholarships were out there. I think in my particular case, I think I was kind of ignorant. I had a 4.0 in high school. Didn't realize I didn't apply for one scholarship. So I went to college without a scholarship, which is incredible nowadays. That you could be that good a student in high school and not even get $1 from college. My case, I would call myself ignorant in that sense because I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so I think education and further education, not even necessarily college, but reading books, get rid of this thing. Sometimes you don't have to learn everything from TikTok and from Facebook or whatever, Instagram or whatever social media programs you do. There's nothing wrong with it, but reading a good book, reading the newspaper every day. I worked closely with someone that was the chairman of Deseret News, and said, "Are you reading the newspaper every day?" And I had to tell him I wasn't subscribing to the Deseret News. I was subscribing to the Tribune. And he's like, "That doesn't matter. I subscribe to both of them, and he got both the papers for life, I think, because he was retired editor of the Deseret News." The other thing I would tell you early in your career or in college, try and pick a mentor, someone in your life that can be a mentor. I had a few early on in college. Unfortunately, 3 of those mentors passed away. Actually, 4 now. So, gave me some great advice. Just recently passed, but I think being a mentor, that could be a neighbor, could be a friend, could be a college professor, could be there's any number of mentors that could give you really good advice. So I was fortunate enough to get some that gave really good career advice. The only regret I think that I have as far as major regret would be that I didn't pursue furthering my education, getting a PhD. I got involved in a career, had a little bit of early success, and decided that I wasn't going to pursue furthering my education as far as formal education. I've since taken many college courses and certificates and different things like that, but I never got my PhD. I never got a master's behind my name. And I'll tell you what, I think MBA really does help fast track a management business career. A lot of Fortune 500 companies, because they're being public or even small companies that are public, they look for that title because it helps investors feel good, even if it doesn't mean you're near as experienced. I've been in a room where I think I probably am a lot better manager than some MBA graduates, maybe not all of them or majority of them, where education does help you. But having that degree gives you background that tells an employer, I guess, a couple of things. One, just the sheer knowledge of you learning more is a great thing. Number two, it tells an employer that you're dedicated to reaching a goal of earning something. That's a degree. Whether that's an undergraduate degree, graduate degree, or anything, it tells an employer you're a go-getter. The other thing is what I already mentioned. I think that besides the knowledge that you gain, it does build confidence in a company that's public, that it's important for them to see that you have not only people with experience, but also with high education behind it. So some of it's perceived and some of it's real. It's probably both, but if there was anything I was going to tell you today, I would say get as much education as you can while you can. If you've got a scholarship to do it, plenty of them out there. So what I've told my daughter's at Utah Valley University right now, and I've told her it's not too late to apply for scholarships. Just keep applying, and even if it's $500, I'll pay for class for 1 or 2 credits. So just try as much as you can. Going back in my career, so I started out more as an entrepreneur, and I started out really learning from kind of hard knocks and learning from going through that experience. It's invaluable because I did get to learn a variety of things, how a business starts and what it takes to run it, from the taxes to everything. So I would never discourage someone being an entrepreneur if that's what you want to do, because you can write your own ticket. But it is also very difficult and requires a lot of discipline. It's going to be successful. Running your own business is difficult. I don't care what kind of business it is. I admire any type of small business owner, entrepreneur, for doing that kind of thing. So I early on worked for some big companies, and then went out on my own right after college. And so that was okay. But looking back, I think it would be good to work for some larger companies that have training programs and different things that you continue to grow and learn a lot from them. It's amazing to me to watch some large Fortune 500 companies. I've had friends get their MBA that are young, and they go through years of training. And I'm like, have an MBA, and like no one reports. They don't have any people that they're managing for 1, 2, 4 years, and because they just keep training them. So by the end of 2 to 5 years, this person knows a lot. So when they do have people that report to them, or they are managing the department, they've gained a great amount of experience. That's probably at the point in time when they do one of two things. They like, I'm in it long term, or thank you very much, you trained me so well, I can go out and start my own business now. And so either way, whatever you decide, working for a large company, doing the best you can for them, both the company. So my experience in Mexico City, right after I got married, it was a small business, a candy importation company. Got thrown in the fire. Any of you been to Mexico City, by the way? One person. What's your experience? Good, okay. Big city, right? So if any of you been to New York, just imagine, been to New York? Okay. So imagine New York, but about 3 times bigger. There's, in the greater Mexico City area, there's about 30 million people. So a third of Mexico's population lives in the greater metro area of Mexico City. It's one of the largest cities in the world. I think Tokyo might be the only city that has more in population than Mexico City. Fun. I mean, I must admit, I really enjoyed Mexico City and eating the food there and everything that you can imagine that's in a large city you can find in Mexico City. But like every large city, there's dangers and good and bad and everything else, just like major cities. That was a very small business. There were 2 employees and one other business partner involved. Thoroughly enjoyed it, but once again, he was doing every aspect of the company. So from a management standpoint, very, very busy. And then I worked when I came back for a larger company as a vice president of a mortgage company. And then my career kind of took a turn after that into more managerial positions. And so everything that I did from an entrepreneur standpoint of running businesses really played well into managing companies. And so I've had an opportunity to see lots of things, do fun things. One of the companies I helped start when I was employee benefits for companies, I helped set up pension plans, such as like 401k plans and whatnot. Some were defined benefit plans and others were open like 401k plan to health benefits and life insurance benefits. And in the process of doing that, I had one client that said, that helped start me on another different entrepreneurial path. He had a product that repaired compact discs called the Disc Doctor. And happened right at a transitional time because I was already doing things to get ready to move to Mexico City and get married. And so we decided to license that product to a company called American Telecast Corporation. Probably no one in this room has heard of American Telecast Corporation. I didn't know it before, but you would know them by some of the products that they own and represent. Has anyone heard the Total Gym? Chuck Norris, Christy Brinkley, the exercise machine that you see on TV virtually every night if you watch TV late night. So that corporation is the same one that we presented our product to, and we licensed our product to that company. So they basically bought all of the rights to the company. I had 4 partners. They guaranteed a minimum of $100,000 a year and a certain percentage. And they were really good at selling. We didn't have great success with it, but it was fun in the process. Part of it of getting involved in licensing it to them. I think I was excited because I thought I was going to make as much money as Chuck Norris did on the exercise machine, which has, by the way, been about $2 billion that they've made on that exercise machine revenue. But a little secret, Chuck Norris makes 5% of every sale, and so his check has been pretty big. But ironically, when they chose him to be the spokesperson, this is when the company got together with Chuck Norris, or excuse me, when the company that owned the machine to begin with got with American Telecast Corporation. Chuck Norris was not the representative. It had nothing to do with representing that product, but he actually did use that product when he was in hotel rooms traveling around the country when he was much younger than he is now. And so he actually did use that machine. So it was a very natural thing for him to represent them because he already used the machine. So it's real, and when he is on TV selling it, he's genuine because it is genuine. It's real. It's not just a paid actor. In his particular case, it was real. And so we were able to get to know some others in that process. Have any of you heard of Dick Clark? Yeah. American Bandstand back in the day. So Dick Clark was our representative for our product, and he represented our product. Unfortunately, I was in Mexico City at the time that my partners were able to meet him in LA at his office, but before we signed him, and you can Google his name later. But anyway, Dick Clark was well known 30 years ago, and 20 years ago, still well known, but now well, since passed away. But anyway, my career has gone on to various management positions. Where I'm at currently is a medical device company, and if I could have Russell press that button, Russell, and we do medical devices that help people in their homes and age in place. And so this is one of our devices. This is our LTE device. And once you push the button, it only takes seconds to connect with our monitoring center. We have 2 monitoring centers, one in South Jordan, Utah, and one in St. George, Utah. So, oh. Yeah, Maddie, we're just doing a test. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of difficulty toggling, but is it, so you're just bench testing?
Yeah, just bench test.
Yeah, it looks like it's just, taking a little while to toggle, but everything's okay.
All right, sounds great. You can just disconnect.
All right, thanks, Lynn. Goodbye.
Goodbye. So this little button here is something that somebody wears. You have a wrist one or this one. You can wear it in the shower. It's waterproof. You're able to wear that 24/7. We actually private label this for some of the largest companies in our industry. The largest being Connect America. They just bought Philips Lifeline for the U.S. And so we manufacture for them their name on the front side of it, but if you turn it over, the FCC registration and everything else is our information on there. And so I've been doing that for about 8 years. And ironically, I didn't apply for the job. The CEO knew me. He knew that I had just invested my shares in my other company that I was a partner in, and wasn't really looking for a job at the time. So I guess my point in that is that it's good to have contacts in the community, keep involved in social contacts, keep involved in professional contacts in the industry. Some of my jobs were not applied for. People sought me out. So it's not always that easy, but if you keep good relations with everyone that you do business with, keep good relations and do a good job for your employer, keep good relations with coworkers. There's no magic in being a good worker or a good coworker. I would tell you, you need to do 2 things: work hard and work smart. So it's not just enough to be intelligent, and it's not just enough to be a hard worker. I think you need to be both. So if you have any takeaway from this meeting today, I would write those 2 things down: work hard and work smart. I enjoyed sharing with you a few things here. I think the time is about 10 minutes away, right, of ending. So I just enjoyed being here and sharing that with you. And I'm going to open it up to question and answers this time. If you have questions for me.
You mentioned working in small businesses, like wearing a lot of different hats and just doing a bunch of different tasks. Is there like a skill that runs through all those that you like have actively worked on?
Yeah, I think so. I think working in a small business or a large business, I think social skills are important. That's something that can be learned as well as something that's natural. It's easier if you naturally have that, but it's definitely something that you can learn with someone. Talk to them directly. One thing that I found that I wish I knew earlier in my career, and that is just being as open as possible. If you're having a problem with somebody, rather than wishy-washy about it, or ask the person next to you, what do you think about this? What do you know? And like, it's okay to ask people for advice, but my experience is that if there's been any difficulty with an employee, I have taken a different approach in the last maybe 15 years than I did 20 years ago. And that is, I think that every person is reflective of the person that you are. If you're a positive person, there's probably positive people around you giving off positive vibes. And so if I was to say anything, it'd be surround yourself with positive, good people, and be positive yourself, and you're going to get positive back, even negative. So I don't know if that answers your question, but as far as like what to look for in small business, just try and gain as much experience as you can, as many things as you can. Don't balk at an assignment someone gives you, like, ugh, I don't want to go flush the toilet because someone else can't plunge it or whatever. Just say, sure, go plunge the toilet. What I find sometimes, it's hard for me to ask someone to do something than to just do it. So maybe that's another thing. If you have a takeaway, just do it. Just do it. Any other questions?
So you said you had some good mentors along your way. Do you have some advice that they shared with you that you felt was particularly important that you pass along to others now?
That's a really good question. I'd have to think about that. One of my mentors was a spiritual mentor. He helped me be open-minded. It was someone who was high up in the faith that I belong to, and I'm kind of a conservative person. I think for a long time I would consider myself an independent. I don't want to get into politics here, but I would consider myself more independent than a Republican or Democrat. I was shocked to find out later that he was head of the Democratic Party here. He was church I belong, apostle, and I was a little surprised because I thought everyone high up was conservative Republicans. That's not the case, and that really opened my mind. Just be open-minded about everyone, to listen to opinions of every side, and to be open-minded about things, and not just so pigeonholed into one particular way of being, whether that's liberal or conservative. So another mentor, ironically, same situation, and that particular one, his name was Thane Robson. The other one was Jim Faust or James Faust. But Jim, or excuse me, Thane Robson was a professor at the University of Utah. He was head of the Bureau of Economic and Business Research, and unfortunately had an untimely death and died fairly young. But he continued to mentor me, continued to give me letters of recommendation, and that was invaluable. I had also very early, from an educational standpoint, I knew the former Secretary of Education, T.H. Bell, and he wrote a letter. Didn't write it directly for some graduate school classes, but Thane Robson, who did write letters specifically to colleges for me, interviewed, and this was one trick maybe that you could write down, rather than have like 10 letters of recommend from really good letters of recommend people. Thane Robson went and interviewed several people that I knew that he knew, so like mutual people. So he got a quote from the dean of the business school, because I was on the dean's business council. He got a quote from T.H. Bell, who was former Secretary of Education under, I think, the Reagan administration. Got another recommend from someone who was former Deseret News chairman. And so that really helped. In one letter, it basically was a recommend from 5 or 6 really highly qualified individuals, highly successful individuals. So that was kind of a trick. I call it a trick. It's not really a trick, but it was a really powerful letter. I don't know if that answers the question. Any other questions? Was there someone over?
I was going to ask, when you first, university that you applied to that sent you the letter, because they have really high GPA standards, how did that affect you at the time? How did you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I'd always been, I mean, even in my college, I didn't have bad grades. I had a high 3-point-something GPA, so it wasn't like I did bad. Although I did have one class that did really bad, but I retook it. But anytime you get rejected, I mean, rejection's hard. In high school, I was tried out for the basketball team. Thought I was better than the people that were on the team. Didn't make it. Rejection happens. So I think what you need to do is just have enough self-worth that it doesn't matter. You just keep moving forward. And so rejection's going to happen, and you're going to apply for a job that you're probably not going to get. I was just telling Lisa, she referred a really good candidate that I probably would have hired, she was one of the final 4 candidates, ended up going a different direction, but really thankful for referring her. Thank you. Really top candidate. But there were 150 people that applied for this position. I don't know if I had a really good ad or why, but a lot of people applied. So unfortunately, I could only hire one person. So there was 149 people that got rejected. And especially for those that made the final 4, I can imagine could be devastating, that you think you're going to get that job, you did a good job. Any one of those 4 could have been great for our company. It wasn't like, in fact, probably 2/3 of the 150 could do the job for our company. And so you're going to have rejection. Don't worry about it. Just move on. Life happens. Rains on the poor, rains on the rich. Rich people and poor people have to put their pants on one leg at a time. I mean, it's life. And my advice would be just move forward and go on. Don't worry about it. Just learn from the experience and try to do better. In an interview, probably do role playing, because interviewing is an important part of the process. Thank you. If any of you had any questions you wanted to ask personal that you didn't want to ask anyone, I'll stick around.